Hey, Hail Stalkers! Happy Friday. Congratulations. You made it to the end of the work week. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we are tracking storms a little bit of everywhere this weekend. Okay, so for today, we go back up into the north central plains. We're talking about Nebraska and Iowa for the most part. For tomorrow, Chicago, by the way, is also in the storm risk for today. That's going to be a late night storm system for you guys, so pay attention to the timing. For tomorrow, as we head into the weekend, we go out to the East Coast and down into Texas. So as I mentioned, a little bit of everywhere, coast to coast, right? From the Gulf Coast to the East Coast. And then as we head into Sunday, we go right back up to the northern plains, but we've got a change in our weather pattern by the time we get into next week. So that could bring storms back down into the central plains. We'll see how that pans out. Over the last 24 hours, man, we really thought that Rapid City was going to get storms yesterday. We had 2 severe thunderstorm warnings just over the state line to the west, and we thought that would come into the city. But those storms, they dissipated before they could get into the city. It's those 2 storms right there, even producing some hail. But those storms did not hit Rapid City. I think that it was warned at one point for 1-inch size hail, pretty small hail across the city. But of course, that storm is mapped at HailTrace.com. We had another storm just outside of Kansas City late last night. That also dissipated before it got into the city, Kansas City proper. But we got a lot of rain through these areas, and we have another flash flood concern once again today. So a little bit of hail, a little bit of wind yesterday. We're going to do a copy and paste, just shifting over to the east a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, we've got Omaha and the storm risk for today. Really, Omaha and Lincoln, that's our big focus for today. But showers and storms are possible all across Iowa, including Des Moines, Chicago. A brand new update that just came to us a few minutes ago for Minnesota, now upgraded to a level 2 storm risk, including Minneapolis. That upgrade was for both hail and strong wind in this area. So we'll talk about that and just how large the hail can get here in just a few minutes. Let's take a look at Saturday. As I mentioned, we've got 1, 2, 3 areas of concern, 1 slight risk, so level 2, across the Northeast, Midwest, and northern plains. And then we've got a marginal risk that just goes across the Red River, includes DFW and Abilene, Texas. So we'll talk about the very complex forecast that we've got going on Saturday. Sunday, we go back up to the northern plains, and that's where we stay as we head into the middle of next week. So we're talking about Tuesday and Wednesday. We have a risk across North Dakota as well. But I do think that some things could change on Tuesday and Wednesday that bring a few storms down to the plains. We just don't have enough information on that quite yet. That could be middle of next week, could be the end of next week. We're not quite sure about the timing. Models aren't great planning that far out. But let's talk about today, because we do have a lot of details for storms today. Let's first talk about the wind risk. So as I mentioned earlier, Lincoln and Omaha are our main focus for storms today. You can see that area that's highlighted in dark blue. We are expecting some stronger wind in this area, at times up to 74 miles an hour, or maybe even slightly stronger, so 74 to 80 miles an hour. Very doubtful we get to that 90 mile an hour zone, but 74 to 80 is definitely possible right in this area in eastern Nebraska. Kansas City, Des Moines, Chicago, you guys are in that level 2 likelihood for storms today. Most likely getting something severe, but 60, maybe 65 mile per hour wind gusts are more your speed. Moving on to that tornado risk, again, we're focusing on Omaha and Lincoln, but we're throwing Des Moines in there for that tornado risk today. A few isolated tornadoes are absolutely possible with this line of storms. And by the way, the timing of this storms is pretty late tonight. So let's take a look at the significant hail model, and then we'll overlay it with our radar, our future radar, what we expect the precip to be, and then we'll talk about the timeline, okay? So what you need to know right now, how dark do those colors go? Can we get any reds or oranges in here? Okay, we've got some oranges. This is pretty decent, either 2-inch size hail. These little red areas right here could mean up to baseball size hail. Look at the timing of this. We've got this spreading over the eastern portion of Nebraska, southern side of Iowa at 8 o'clock tonight. So the sun is about to set, and we could see some hail on the ground. As we head into the late night hours, that shifts to the east and into Chicago, and we'll talk about the late night round of storms for Chicago as well. Let's talk about timing now. You've got a few showers on the board right now. A few showers moving through Chicago at the moment. Nothing is severe at the moment. But as we head into the late night hours, we're talking about 7, maybe 8 o'clock tonight. All of a sudden, we start to see these storms fire up right around Lincoln and Omaha, maybe just slightly to the west of there. Now for Lincoln, it depends on where these storms fire. If they form to the west, to the east of you, if they form to the east of you, you may miss out on that severe weather. Omaha, I think that you guys are in a very, very good spot for storms today. You can see we've got isolated storms right here. We'll see if they go to the city or if they just stay to the south. All hazards possible, including that large hail up to baseball size hail, tornado or two, and strong wind speeds also possible here. This will continue into the late night hours and overnight tonight until about midnight, maybe 1 or 2, and then you're finally out of that severe weather risk as we head into the overnight hours. Now, as always, ask your weather questions in the chat. However, we'll have another timeline here in just a few minutes. If you're looking for the timeline for Des Moines, Chicago, we'll talk about it. Max forecasted hail size for tonight, baseball size hail, kind of gave that away earlier. Where are we talking? Right in that area that we've been talking about already. Omaha to Lincoln, even McCook, Nebraska, just on the very edge of that large hail risk. Des Moines also looking to get some hail tonight as well. Now, we just had a brand new update for Minneapolis. I think I would change this to a level 2 risk for hail in Minneapolis. However, I wouldn't update the hail size. I think that we're going to struggle in Minnesota to get anything over $50 size hail for tonight. Maybe an isolated ping pong or golf ball, but I really think that that big risk for hail is going to be down in Nebraska and Iowa. We also have a risk for Chicago, but that Chicago risk is going to also stay very isolated. Now, the difference between Omaha and Chicago is the timeline. For the most part, you know, we've got a few different factors there, but the timeline for Chicago is 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. As I mentioned earlier, you guys have storms on top of you right now, but nothing severe, and I'm not expecting anything to go severe in Chicago. The big round of storms will come overnight tonight while you're sleeping, most likely. Maybe a strike of lightning, a rumble of thunder out your window, but max hail size here, I'm keeping pretty low to $50 size hail. Most likely you'll get some strong wind. But again, for Omaha, actually I'm going to go back to Omaha. Here we go. For Omaha, your timeline is between 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. and you guys have a much better chance for large hail. We're talking about golf ball size hail. I would upgrade this to baseball size hail. I don't think I upgraded this portion of the graphic. Okay, so just imagine there's a 2 there instead of a 1. Baseball size hail, and your likelihood for this, I put you guys in the level 2, so I think there's a really good chance. The only problem with these storms hitting Omaha is Omaha is a relatively small target, and the area of storms is relatively large. So if we get one storm to go to the north and one to the south, and they're producing baseball size hail, but it just doesn't hit the city itself, then that's why I kept this kind of on the lower risk for today, that moderate risk. If we had like a DFW sitting here where we have a larger target, I would upgrade that immediately. But enough with the forecast. Your timeline for today, 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. for Omaha. For Chicago, we go a little bit later, 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. overnight tonight and into Saturday morning. And once again, I told you I'd show that timeline again. Let's talk about Des Moines here. So for Des Moines, of course, you stay dry for most of the day. You guys will most likely get storms shortly after Omaha does. So instead of a 7 p.m. start time, let's go about 10 p.m. for you guys. Storms will likely last into the overnight hours. I want you to take a look at this line of storms. We can have one storm after another come through this area. So just because you get one severe thunderstorm warning doesn't mean you can't get a second or a third one. Also, with that round after round of storms, you can see some flooding on the roadways. Now, thankfully, not a ton of people are out at midnight, 1, 2, 3, 4 a.m. But just if you are, it's dark, it's hard to see flooded roadways, keep that in mind. Taking a look at your future radar for your upgraded storm risk for today, just brand new upgrade. We've got a level 2 storm risk for Minneapolis. Let's take a look at the timeline for Minneapolis today. A few storms through the afternoon hours, maybe some of our earlier storms of the day. And that could continue through the evening hours tonight, most likely wrapping up right around midnight. So Minneapolis, your storm timeline between 3 p.m. and midnight. Lots of rain over the past 24 hours. That's going to contribute to the flood risk. I mentioned this earlier, but just by the way, we've got a level 2 flood risk on the board for Texas, Iowa, and Nebraska. Tomorrow, we go down into Oklahoma and Texas for a lot of rain in this area. We've got a little low pressure system setting up right here. This is going to bring a lot of activity over the next few days. But the problem with this is that it's pretty weak right now. It's a little finicky, so a lot of things can change in a short amount of time. You're going to get most of your storms up to the north, but a few of those down in Texas and Oklahoma. So I know that we don't have a risk on the board for Sunday yet, but I do think that that's coming. Let's move on. Let's talk about Saturday real quick. We're going to talk about that hail risk first. So let's go down. I actually think that we go up to the north first. Which way did I do this graphic? Where are we going? Oh, we're going out to the Midwest. Okay. So we've got 3 areas for concern on Saturday. Your main area, the most likely area for storms, is going to be across the Midwest, anywhere from the eastern portion of Indiana through Ohio and into Pennsylvania. Columbus, Ohio is the place that I have for the largest hail on Saturday. As we move into the northern plains, Glasgow has the best chance for strong storms on Saturday, and I went ahead and upgraded a portion of Texas for strong storms. Now, I think that it's going to be a low risk for large hail. You could get some hail in this area. I'm keeping the risk level low, so the likelihood that we get golf ball size hail in this area, I would say would be like 10 to 20% chance, a very low risk. Your better chances for large hail, including baseball size hail, is going to be more likely in Ohio. So let's take a look at that wind forecast for Saturday. Level 2 up in the northern plains. We've got a level 2 wind risk anywhere from Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and portions of our northeastern states. Detroit, you guys are just barely north of that storm risk. I think that most of these storms will be to the south of Detroit. And looking at your wind forecast for Saturday, Dallas, you guys are just barely on the edge of this risk. I think better chances for severe storms closer to Abilene. But hey, Texas has surprised us before. And with this low pressure system setting up, I think that it could surprise us again. This weekend, we kind of have a really good idea of what's going to happen across the Midwest. Texas is our wild card. So things could surprise us in Texas. We're ready for that surprise. Let's talk about the tornado risk. Not down in Texas. The most likely area for tornadoes on Saturday will be Cleveland and Pittsburgh. So northeastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania. Moving on, let's talk about your significant hail model and put a timeline to this. So late tonight, early tomorrow morning, that potential for hail goes through Chicago. Again, low risk, especially given the time of day or the time of night those storms are moving through. On Saturday, tomorrow, you can see that we every now and get these bits of yellows and oranges to move through. Your timeline for hail is going to be very, very short. Let's talk about that. I think between about 5 and 8 o'clock in the evening, you can see these storms come through in the morning, but then they'll fire back up in the afternoon. Here's your next line of storms coming through Ohio with some of that hail really trying to push through between about 5 and 8 o'clock on Saturday. Here you go, eastern Ohio, and that severe risk goes down significantly as the sun sets. And we go into early Sunday morning. But hey, speaking of the weekend, before we move on to Sunday, I want to bring in meteorologist Martin Lowrimore. Now, Martin, we can talk about these maps all day long, but behind the scenes, us meteorologists have a ton of different models that we look at to make these maps. Give us a breakdown of some of the conversations that we had this morning as we were making the forecast.
Yeah, I mean, over the past several days, we have been watching these models very closely, and the biggest thing that I can tell, at least over the past couple of days, has been really, we've been developing almost a zonal flow, and this is what we're sitting in for today. So this is kind of a different map that you were seeing that Taylor was showing you. You're seeing most of these lines here moving straight east to west, and that is what we call that zonal flow. Now, you can still get these little wobbles, these little short waves, which is giving us that severe weather chance for today. Now, as we move ahead in time, we are still watching that area of low pressure. You can see that area up toward the Pacific Northwest that Taylor was mentioning earlier. That's going to be shaking things up over the next couple of days. So obviously this weekend, you might have some plans. So let's break down exactly why we're seeing these severe weather risks across Texas, the East Coast, and once again, back into the Great Basin area. All right, so this is our 500 millibar ranges. We can move these ahead in time. These areas that are shaded darker are stronger winds. Now, as we move our way into, this is about our Friday afternoon, so we're gonna move into about our Saturday. Move ahead in there, there's that low pressure, that long wave right there over the Pacific Northwest, some good ascent. That's going to be bringing back in that chance for that severe weather back in the Basin area, the Great Basin area, Montana, parts of Wyoming, a little bit of western North Dakota. As we move toward the east, we're seeing another, again, that low pressure bringing in those chances for hail, wind, and even a bit of a tornado risk out in a second to kind of break down exactly why we're seeing this risk in Texas specifically for that hail and wind. So we're gonna look at our dew points. Dew points are never usually a big limiting factor around here. We got dew points in the 70s, 60s, stretching all the way into the Dakotas. So moisture is a given this time of year, but bulk shear. That's one of the things that has been a limiting factor for a lot of these storms lately, and also your lift as well. But I'll get to our lapse rates in just a second. But the bulk shear, we're seeing plenty of that across parts of Nebraska, reason why Omaha is going to be seeing plenty of those storms today and bringing in, of course, a good chance for that hail. I believe we're calling for baseball-sized hail and even up to 80-mile-an-hour winds. So it's going to be a pretty action-packed day across Iowa and Nebraska. Now, as we move into tomorrow, we see that shear returning back into parts of Texas. Again, combine that with the existing dew points in the 70s. If we can get some of these lapse rates to be a little bit stronger in Texas, we can have some pretty good hail. It's going to be tough to get these storms because as we look at our lapse rates in Texas for this weekend, where are they? You know, we're sitting around our Saturday afternoon here, and we're only seeing just a couple shades of that yellow starting to pop in. If we could get one of these storms to really fire up, we could get some decent hail because we've got the moisture. We've got the bulk shear. We've got almost all the ingredients. We're just really needing that lift with these lapse rates to really cause these storms to fire and allow these updrafts to allow these larger hailstones. I also want to look at Cape. That is one thing we're seeing in abundance over the past couple of days and continuing into tomorrow. This is your Saturday afternoon. We got several thousand joules of Cape. That's about all we really need for a lot of these storms. Continuing that up towards the Ohio River Valley where they are also still seeing more of those good chances for storms. So this weekend is looking to see an increase in that threat level, Taylor. Texas, Great Basin, East Coast, and it's going to continue into our Sunday. And we are still looking at that big pattern change going into next week as well. I believe you're going to be talking about that pretty soon, but you know, it could almost look like, you said it earlier, almost a spring-like pattern possibly next week.
If we can get that trough to come down enough into the Central Plains, I think it'll look very spring. If it stays up to the north, and here's the problem, is we've got a little high pressure system that's sitting right in the southeast that's going to stall that trough from moving across the nation, then it may look a little bit more like June, which, you know, is typical for this time of the year. Hey, while Martin was talking, I saw a great question about Texas or DFW for storms this weekend. Yes, you guys are just barely in that storm risk this weekend. Okay, so it's going to be mainly on the northwestern side of the city. So let's go all the way down into Texas here. But one of the questions, and Martin hinted on this during his forecast, one of the questions that we have about Texas storms this weekend is that we have great lapse rates at the surface. We have very, very poor lapse rates higher up in the atmosphere. Okay, so if you go into like the mid-levels of the atmosphere where a lot of that hail forms, very, very poor lapse rates. What does that mean? It's going to be hard for that hail to be sustained inside that storm and grow. So most likely what we'll see in Texas this weekend will be some smaller hail, which is why I have kept you guys all in that low risk. Now, Texas could surprise us. It's done that before. Sometimes we have no risk at all and we get ping pong ball size hail. That happened on Monday. So it's possible to get hail in this area, but right now what models are showing us is that it's going to be a smaller smaller hailstones are more likely. And I think that person who asked that question, John, do you see it on your side of the screen? Yes. We appreciate your questions, by the way, was Marcus. Marcus was asking, Dallas, any hail coming? Now, Martin kind of hinted to this, that we've got a change in our weather pattern. And what we see is we see this low pressure system on the Pacific, the northwest coast right now. If it can dig far enough into the nation, so we're talking about near Colorado, if we can get that big lift across Texas and Oklahoma, then we could see better chances for storms as we head into the midweek. Now, models every now and then will bring it to the south and then every now and then put it to the north. It's too soon to tell right now exactly how fast and how far south this is coming in. But if we can see this move to the south a little bit more, then we're going to see better chances for hail in Oklahoma and Texas. Denver next week. Okay, perfect timing. Look at this. Yeah, so this setup right here is going to be perfect for storms in Denver. You get those storms coming over the mountains, you're in a great area to see storms in Denver. So I think that Denver could be a hot spot next week. But again, we don't have a ton of information. If you look about 4 days out, models are not great about telling us timing and location for things. We could say something's going to happen in this area, but not quite sure where. Great question about Denver. I do think that'll be a hot spot next week, especially if these storms continue to, or if this low pressure system continues to trend to the north, kind of like what we saw this week. Denver had, 3 days in the hail risk this week? We could see that next week too. So it just depends. I'll let Denver and Dallas fight in the comments section over what they prefer to happen next week. Let's talk about Sunday now. So your storm risk on Sunday, I've kept everyone just about in the low category, except for those North Dakota folks, Minot, Bismarck, all in that level 2 for some small hail on Sunday. And then we've got one little area out in Richmond that could also see some small hail and some strong wind speeds, about 60 mile per hour wind speeds possible in these areas. But the better chance for storms on Sunday is going to be up in North Dakota. So if you didn't see the forecast earlier, we're going to run back through it one more time. We've got 2 chances for hail today. The main area across Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska. But we could see a few storms go severe between Minneapolis and just to the west of Green Bay. As those storms reach Chicago by late tonight, basically early tomorrow morning, we're talking about between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, they'll reach Chicago. Low chance for severe weather, but it's possible. We have a very small tornado risk just to the south of I-80. So it hugs I-80 and then anywhere to the south of that to the state line for that tornado risk. For Saturday, storms basically from the East Coast all the way down to the border. And then we've got storms on the other side of the border up to North Dakota and Montana. All hazards possible on all hazards possible on Saturday, but that main risk will be across Ohio and Pennsylvania. Here's Sunday. So your Sunday storm risk is going to mainly include North Dakota, but again, it depends on that low pressure system down in Oklahoma and Texas. I think that we could get some storms on Sunday. We're just too unsure about it to put that risk right now. So keep an eye on the forecast this weekend. We'll keep you guys informed on social media. We'll keep you guys updated on Oklahoma and Texas on Sunday. Tuesday and Wednesday, as I mentioned, things are starting to change. So we've already got a marginal risk for Tuesday and Wednesday in the northern plains, but again, I think that could change as we get a little bit closer. Any last minute storm questions before we move on? All right, we're going good here. Let's go ahead and talk about that heat that's moving in this weekend. Look at this warm up here. Okay, all the way through Wednesday, temperatures are on the rise. We go from the 80s to the 90s to maybe some triple digits, trying to squeak in there as we head into the middle of next week. Very typical for June to get this summer-like heat, but how long does this last? It looks like temperatures are likely to stay above average all the way through the middle of June. So we're looking at the 10th, I think this is to the 14th at this point. Chicago, St. Louis, you guys have a really good chance for warmer than average temperatures. What about that rainfall? We need that rain to keep coming. We've got a better chance down in the southeast and a better chance up to the north for higher chances for rain or greater rainfall than normal. That's what this map shows. And there's your forecast. We had a ton to talk about today. If we have any major changes in the forecast for tomorrow, specifically for places like Columbus, Ohio, or Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, we'll make sure that we update you guys on social media. So make sure that you follow us on all forms of social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, and give us a call at 855-334-4639. 4245 for a hail, wind, or tornado map. If you don't have any storms today, it is the perfect day to get trained on the app. Call us, we can get someone to help you go through the entire app, how you can use it best, get your money's worth out of it. Info@hailtrace.com to set that up or give us a call, or head over to our website, hailtrace.com, for more weather information. Thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we'll see you back here same time.